heart breaks for this family, for this grandma. And I'm very concerned of the status of where these boys are. Now, I've explained to everyone previously that you are the attorney that represents this family.
Yes.
And you have been placed under a gag order with this particular family. So I know there's not a lot that you can say at this point. Except the only thing I can say at this point regarding that is that they have the best attorney to handle this case that they could possibly have.
Yeah.
And, but I want to talk about some general questions, Connie. Number one, how does this even happen for any family?
Mm-hmm.
How is this even continuing with all of the voices that have been raised, with all of the articles that have been raised? How in the world? I know at one time you were on a campaign mission, and I was part of that. Of course, I didn't videotape it, but we sent letters, and we drove them to the White House to try and get recognition. I mean, obviously that has done what for us?
Yeah, well, we can't. First of all, I'll say we won't stop. Secondly, I will say in very, very small ways, sometimes I see a little bit of progress. I had to join this as a mission for myself because even though I have won a lot of cases for a lot of people, I really just decided I cannot win this one case at a time. I can't do it. And as I started gathering people through social media and stuff, and people were asking me for help, I'm like, I can't do one case at a time. They wear me out, Jennifer. They wear me out. I mean, somebody, this is my business and I have to be hired, but, I understand people don't have $100,000 to go fight DCS. You can't hold their hand all the time. So, I have several cases though, and I'm working with this family up in northeastern Tennessee, and I met Whitney through social media, and I got involved, and the whole issue about a parent losing their parental rights because of mental incompetency has always bothered me, especially knowing that there is the Americans with Disabilities Act. So,
But hold on a second. Hold on. I want to go back to that for just a second. Because I've had other cases here in Kansas, right, that were under the Disability Act.
Mm-hmm.
But yet when I tell them, hey, you need to reach out to the ADA, you need to get them involved, they are violating your rights.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do this just because you were in a car accident, sustained a coma for 2 weeks, and then came out and had the inability to work like you did. But they don't do anything, Connie. They don't even half the time return the calls at these people.
Okay, well, you see, I will say you're making that a little bit too complicated. Here's what they need to do. They need to sit down and they need to write out what their disability is, and they need to ask for accommodations and put it in the court file it with the court, and file it with the agency. Because let me tell you the magic about the ADA. There's no immunity. Okay, there's no immunity. If you put somebody on notice that you have a disability and you need accommodations, and that their very next step is that they're supposed to do an individualized assessment. Any government agency, the school, the agent, the child welfare agency, the judge, they're supposed to do an independent assessment of you as to what accommodations they need to make for you so that you can properly have services. So the onus is on forget trying to call the Health and Human Services under Civil Rights and ADA. Forget trying to call the Department of Justice. The person who is disabled, and here's what I did in the Manning case, is I prepared a memorandum. And people by now should be familiar with the Sarah Gordon case out of Massachusetts. And if they are not familiar with it, they need to go to Google, type in Sarah Gordon 2015 Department of Justice, and get a copy of the Massachusetts opinion. Now people will go, oh, but that's Massachusetts. Does not matter. It does not matter, because the Department of Justice is the United States of America.
Right.
So,
right. Right.
And there's a United States Supreme Court case that says that under ADA, you have to listen to what the Department of Justice says. So I did a memorandum in Whitney's case, and I quoted the Sarah Gordon case, and I quoted this other Supreme Court case, and I said, you have to give her accommodations. And the Department of Justice has said, in this particular case, that allowing a relative to help you co-parent is a reasonable accommodation. So it's a done deal. Now, I'll tell you, I've got one pending in the federal court right now, and the department does not know what to do with it. And we were set for a jury trial in December, and we got bumped. So I don't know what's going to happen, and I'll keep you all posted, but I'm raising this very issue in the federal courts right now.
Okay, so if we have, because I run into this a lot, more than you know, where I have either a diagnosis of, physical disability or mental disability. I can think of a couple moms right now who were diagnosed with bipolar, but yet they were terminated on that very diagnosis. And no assistance from the American Disabilities Group at all.
Right.
Period. In fact, the judge just didn't even hear it, didn't even care. And there was never any assistance afforded. There was nothing. They just lost their children.
Wow.
So that's something I do want to make sure that we address. But how do we allow children for 8 years?
This is horrible.
But again, Whitney is not alone.
No, she's not.
This is happening. I can think of some very good grandparents that are here in Kansas, the Fries. They had a $500,000 home. They had bedrooms that looked like little princess castles for their granddaughter. They had, you know what I mean? I mean, they had everything these children could need, and yet they lost them.
That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous.
But I see it over and over. What do we need to do? What do we need to do?
Well, I think I will share this memorandum with you, this ADA memorandum, because it is not state specific. Now, there are some things in it that are state specific. You need to find out if your state agency has an ADA policy. When I looked up my state agency, the only ADA policy they had was if you were employed by them. So if you were employed by them and you had a broken leg, you could request ADA accommodations. But if you have a child and they've taken your child because you have a broken leg, they have no policy for accommodating you. So we can go ahead.
So we can't. There's so many questions I want to ask you about this Whitney's case, and I know I can't. But I guess anytime I see these children that have substantiated true abuse in the care of the state through foster agencies, is there something that the parents or even outsiders that are aware of these abuses that have been told by the children, some even captured on audio, is there something that we as citizens should be doing? Should we call the police? Should we call and make police reports?
Well, and I'll tell you what happens is the police says call CPS. They won't even talk to him. I mean, that has become so incestuous in that one area. The police won't even. I mean, I used to be a district attorney, and I could not call the police on child abuse. I could not say, if somebody called me as a district attorney and said, I want to report child abuse, I wasn't allowed to take it, and I had to send it to CPS. I could not even get a detective involved in it.
That is disgusting.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is.
Because a crime should be handled by the police.
It should. I totally agree.
Not uneducated, unexperienced social workers that run around with swollen heads that think they're God.
Right. And I'm going to say something else too. In Miss Manning's case, her daughter never neglected or abused her children. Never.
Right.
Now, I mean, there might be some borderline neglect because she did have some mental health issues, but I mean, they weren't starved, they were dressed.
But there was also grandma backing her up.
Oh, and a great grandma. Now, the great grandma passed away, but for quite a long period of time, the great grandma, the mom was living with the great grandma, so while she was still alive. So she had all of that family support, and yet she was cut off from her children.
So I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it for general purpose anyway. Why do you think that they continue to alienate these children away from entire families when they know good and well there is no substantiation of abuse? They know good and well that these children, by all rights, should be with family. Why, Connie?
Well,
why and how?
Well, we know it's money. We know it's all about the money. I will tell you, I am extremely troubled by the lack of consideration of a child's constitutional right to family integrity. You know, I just, this over the past few days, I've got Whitney's case. I've actually got another grandmother's case from up in northeastern Tennessee where they hijacked the kids and wouldn't give them to grandma. And so I got online and I pulled all these relative placement cases. And it's very, very troubling because in every one of these relative placement legal cases, nobody ever says the child should equally have a consideration of his constitutional right to have family integrity. I mean, the United States Supreme Court has said the Constitution applies to children too. So a child equally, what these relative placement cases do is they say, once a parent's rights are terminated, there is no grandparent. There is no grandparent.
Right.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. The child has a right to family integrity. The child has a right to know who their grandparents are. It's very...
So then why aren't guardian ad litems that represent the children, that I find most often don't even speak to their clients?
Exactly.
But yet get up in court and say, oh, yes, Your Honor, they need to be removed from all their family. Put them in foster care.
Well...
how do we hold those people accountable?
Okay, well... let me tell you, you know, a case came out in Tennessee about 2 weeks ago that said guardian ad litems do not have immunity. So, don't have absolute immunity anyway. So,
really?
so that's put a new twist to the guardian ad litem story. But let me just tell you, it's a game show in juvenile court. You know, it's like the Family Feud, right? I mean, it's all just a game and it's all just a sham. And the guardian ad litem serve as parents, attorneys. They all get court appointed by the court. The judge really doesn't want to work that hard anyway. So it's much easier to plead a case out and corner these parents and say, oh, well, if you'll just admit to abuse and neglect, if you'll just admit to the lowest level of neglect, then you're more likely to get your kids back. And then they trap kids in foster care for 15 months. And then they're like, well, you didn't follow a case plan. Right? Happens all the time. And
we have a case. Yeah, we have a case very similar to that is actually my daughter's friend that I've known for years. And her child was a small infant, 9 months old, and the mom woke up to the child being severely burned. Well, what had happened, somehow, some way, the child got onto the floor furnace. And basically they said, well, you just need to tell us how the child got on the floor furnace. And mom's going, I can't tell you what I don't know. I mean, you can. And as you know, and then of course the experts went out and found that the heater on the floor furnace was set at 510 degrees. Well, and you're going to tell me a child can't wiggle out of a car seat? Are you? I mean, and I've got this judge that I had faith in, right? That I thought, oh, this guy's got brains, he's got common sense. I mean, the injuries to this baby is very clear. She rolled around on a 510 degree floor furnace. That should be outlawed in my opinion, but there's still older homes with them in there, and this was the house that she rented, had it in there. There has been, but instead of common sense applying, they're going to terminate. They want to terminate this mom because she won't admit to something she didn't do.
Right.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
That's right.
So, I want to talk about the new federal thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Matter of fact, it just passed. I've got a copy of it here. And what happened, and this is kind of just an interesting little government lesson.
Yeah, they should, actually. Did I lose Connie? Uh-oh. Connie, did I lose you? Okay, hold on. I think we've lost Connie. Let me go back. Here we go. Let me get Connie back on there. Okay, Connie, I sent you another. I did, Steve. I lost her. But we'll grab Connie back. Connie is getting ready to update us on federal law. So something, I think today or yesterday, changed. There we go. Okay, I'm approving you, Connie. There we go. Oh, no, not approve. Well, let's see. Approve. Okay, it says it's adding you. Welcome to my world, Connie, of technical difficulty.
Well, yeah.
There you are. Jennifer McGrath. I just want to say hi to you, Sunshine from California. Jennifer McGrath is another attorney that I've worked with closely. I just seen her pop up. So Jennifer, meet Connie. Connie, meet Jennifer. But Connie, I want you to bring us up to speed, and then we're going to talk about something that I also want Jennifer McGrath to be a part of. But let's talk about the federal change. What happened, Connie?
Okay, well, I want to say something else, though, before we leave the whole issue about being silenced. And that is that there is a United States Supreme Court case called Garrison v. Louisiana, and it is about what is criminal sedition. And criminal sedition is basically from England, right? And it's like if you say something bad about the king, you could go to prison, right? It is speaking bad about the king. And so we passed sedition laws in the United States after the American Revolution because even though we had just overthrown a government, the people who were now creating a government didn't want anybody to speak bad about them, right? So we did the very same thing here, and then ultimately creates what's called a star chamber, or judges who can do no wrong. And we lived under that, honestly, for a long time, like 200 years. And then in 1964, this case came out. And this is a case that really talks about, and I'm just going to read this one sentence from here because this whole thing about people being silenced is extremely troubling because judges are, of course, public figures. The Child Welfare Agency is a public agency. And I know I heard you and Terry talking about foster parents, and Terry saying, well, we don't really talk about foster parents. But foster parents, once they take on the role that they're on, they are public servants. They're not elected,
that is correct,
but they are public servants. And so the fact that they want to hide in anonymity is really unfair, unjust, and I don't think they have the right to do it. I think they become public. But it says...
Well, let me find out their names. I'll be talking to Terry, and that won't be secret for long because I don't have no qualms about exposing who people are with regard to our children. They're paid by taxpayers. If you're paid by taxpayers, you get my money, you work for me. You harm a child, you are apt to be exposed for that harm that you have created to a child, because just like a pedophile, you're on a registry because everybody needs to know who's harming children. Foster parents are no exception. And don't get me wrong, there are good foster parents. One of my very best friends is a foster parent, and she's a great foster parent. And she actually works at the right, with the right cases. She had 2 kids, and she worked very hard to reintegrate with her family. And she's still a part of those children, and she still sees them, and she still goes up for their birthday. But there are those that do it for the money. there are those that don't care, that they will abuse a child in a heartbeat, and those people have to be exposed. Period.
Right. All right, and so let me tell you what the United States Supreme Court said. It says fining men or sending them to jail for criticizing public officials not only jeopardizes the free, open public discussion which our Constitution guarantees, that can wholly stifle it.
Yes.
So that's what we're here for. Public politicized speech is about our government, and to do anything to shut us up. If we say this is what they've done is horrible, these children have been abused by public servants, there should be nothing that should stop people from speaking about it.
Right.
I'm just outraged by it.
Well, I do know we have one attorney here on a Kansas case that's just chomping at the bit, because this was one of our moms that was put in jail for posting on my Facebook, and I do know that lawsuit intends to move forward once the 12-month monitoring phase of DCF is completed, which is coming real soon. So that'll be interesting how that, because we'll make that very public. So we've kind of covered that. I know that there's some questions, and I think Ann's kind of monitoring those questions, and we'll take a few of those at the end. But first, Connie, I want you to tell us what the update is with federal law.
Okay, so the Families First Act, which is one of the first things we went up to Washington and started our lobbying for, started about 2 years ago, and it went all the way through Congress, and then it got to the Senate, and there were 2 senators who were holdouts on it. One was a Texas senator who probably has a big investment in foster care, and then the other one was from, I can't remember, but there were like 2 senators they needed to go along with it, and they wouldn't. So it looked like it had kind of died. And then President Trump got elected, and then after his election in December, the Senate really just didn't want to do anything. But what has happened is in the budget that just passed yesterday, they included this act. It's kind of interesting that they did that. But it really is about redefining how they use Title IV funds. Now, I will say, and I want everybody to be cautious, because the whole foster care industry is so entrenched in itself and so deeply invested in making money that it's not like we're going to snap our fingers and we're going to have some major changes. But there are some things in here that they're redirecting. And one of the things is that they're requiring the states to have a prevention plan, which to identify a foster care prevention strategy for the child, so that the child may remain safely at home, live temporarily with a kin caregiver until reunification can be safely achieved, or live permanently with a kin caregiver. Now, we all know they kind of sort of say they do that now.
No, they don't. Yeah, they don't. Not in any capacity, unless the grandparent or the kin can go become a licensed foster parent, so that they can still collect the same Title IV funding as they would with a stranger being a foster parent. That's the only way that I'm identifying that grandchildren and relatives are even possibly getting their loved ones.
Exactly. Now, also, though, the whole kinship payments, they tried kinship payments, and then in about 2012, I think it was, the till went dry for kinship payments. So that kind of fell out. And then the thing in this bill is it does say Title IV payments for evidence-based kinship navigator programs. Now, for people may or may not know, but there's a huge difference between Title IV and Title IV. So Title IV,
right?
And yeah, D is the child support. But if we just look at E and B, E is what I call the use it or lose it, bottomless pocket for cash for the states. And so if you don't use what we give you this year, you're not going to get as much next year. However, if you need more, we'll just keep dishing it out. There's no limitations on it. It's a match, so you have to put up your own money, but it's only for foster care. You have to remove a child from the home before you can get it. Title IV-B is the money that was always known to be the reunification family preservation money, and it is limited and it's capped, and every year they cap it out. So, and if you look at the Title 4E versus Title 4B, Title 4E is 10 times as much. And I've got all the charts to show that. So we have had 10 times as much money going into foster care as we have in family preservation.
Oh,
So now,
absolutely. Yeah.
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 So
They don't want to preserve the families because that's not where the money is.
Right. So this does say that it allows for Title 4E money to be used for kinship. And here's another thing that I found in here. And again, sometimes when you read these laws, your mind goes a little flip-flops, so back and forth a little bit until you can really digest it. But it says that it is eliminating the time limit for family reunification services while in foster care and permitting time-limited family reunification services when a child returns home from foster care. Well, what that means to me is that all of these parents face what I call the 15-month guillotine, right?
Yes.
So if your child's been in foster care for 15 months, they've always been under this mandate that they have had to start termination proceedings. I understand this to say that it's removing that time limitation for trying to reunify where there's parents who need extra services, but it is putting a time limitation on the services once the child gets home. So that's kind of the way I read that, which is it's sort of a good thing, but I mean, again, if there's no oversight, and the bottom line, really, Jennifer, isn't it really oversight?
Yes.
There's no oversight.
Yes, it is. I keep telling him, Connie, put me in charge of DCF. You want to see family reunification happen? You want to see children stop being abused? Put us in charge. Put people like us in charge. It's not rocket science, guys. It really is not rocket science. Those children should never be traumatized and removed and then force-fed pharmaceutical drugs to shut them up so that they can collect a paycheck. It's that simple. Right. It doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen.
Or,
But it is. It is. It is happening.
They also have, a problem. And probably about 10 years ago was the very first time I decided that I was going to file an internal complaint on a worker. I got together, I wrote it out, I was crystal clear, I'm a really good writer, I'm very detailed, I laid out all the facts, I attached the pleadings where they had abuse policies, they lied in pleadings, and I sent it in to the Department of Children's Services. And, well, first I called, I said, where do I file complaints? And they're like,
well, social workers is the BSRB, right?
Yeah. So I was like, they were like, they don't have a place to file complaints. So I filed it with the commissioner's office. Now, what they did after that is they started saying you had to file it with their supervisor or the regional director, and I'm like, no, that's not good enough, because their supervisor wants to look good too. So their supervisor's never going to be accountable to what's happening in their region. It's going to have to go above that. So we have got to have accountability and oversight, and we've got to have a place where parents can have their cases reviewed and scrutinized by somebody who can point out things that are not
okay. So
right.
Hold on, let me ask you this, because this is what I want to be drafted, and in fact, I would say that the only person I feel confident in this point in time in legislation, there would be a couple, but I'm thinking Representative Gail Finney or Representative Jerry Owsley. We need a bill that says you can no longer terminate parental rights without a jury of our peers.
Well, yeah.
I mean, why would that not be applicable? Isn't that part of due process, Connie?
Yeah, I agree.
And the anonymous reporting, is that not a direct violation of the Constitution of the United States that says we should face our accuser?
Yeah.
Have you yourself not seen 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old little girls get up and take the stand to face their molesters? They're not exempt from the stand.
Right. And let me tell you, Jennifer, what I think is happening. I think caseworkers are filing reports.
Are you too?
I
have one particular family yesterday, Connie, that all 5 of her children removed. That woman has been harassed from the get-go of me getting in, and that was the morphine baby case. That's the case. That was it. So it's mind-boggling to me. And then the detective, I posted the video yesterday. the detective that came out from the EMCU says on camera, well, there looks like there might be some bad touching between siblings going on, but I wouldn't really call it abuse. Quote, I wouldn't really call it abuse, and yet 30 minutes later, they came and removed all of her children, traumatized her children, and they're still not in her possession.
Mm.
I
Well,
mean,
and let me tell you an example that I'm just sure the caseworker did it. I had a case here in Tennessee, and it was a medical kidnapped baby. It was a premature infant with cracked ribs, fractured ribs. They always say they crushed the child. They took the baby. He was only like 3 months old, and mom was pregnant. And by the time the baby came, she was getting ready to have the other baby, and she called me and she goes, "Are they going to take my baby? Are they going to take my baby?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, and they hadn't had the trial yet on the first baby, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, but I'm just scared for you. And so she had two attorneys. She had another attorney because she's kind of far away from me, and her other attorney and her went to a meeting with DCS about 2 months before she had the baby, and they were like, "Are you going to take her?" They asked him in the meeting, "Are you going to take this new baby?" And DCS said, "We have to have a referral." And that new baby was born, perfect health. Mom was perfect health. There's no drugs. There's no signs of any type of prenatal neglect or anything. They took that baby at 2 days old. Where do you
see,
think
I tell
that
my
was
parents,
from?
I tell my parents, Connie, in fact, we've done it multiple times. If your children are in custody and you're pregnant, you need to get out of this state and have that baby. And we've done it. And that's the only thing that's protected some of these children, is the fact that we broke the jurisdictional hold and they couldn't go into another state and take them. That's the only way we've been able to protect those newborns. And that's disgusting that we have to do that. Now, and I know it's getting late, but I also want to talk about what's coming up. You have some events. You have some events also, though. So let's talk about those, because I want to make sure if anybody's watching that wants to participate, and I encourage you to do that, let's talk about your schedule. What's upcoming for you next?
Okay, the next thing, the very first thing coming up is February 17th, North Carolina. We're doing an event in Wilmington, and all of these are posted in the Family Forward Project events. And then after that, let's see, so then we go to March 17th. March 17th, I am in Connecticut. And then we go to the next weekend, March the 22nd and 23rd, and I'm going to Great Falls, Montana, and Billings, Montana. And then I've got somebody working on Indiana. I think I've got somebody working on Georgia. I'm not real sure. I do have somebody working on an event in Ohio, which will probably end up being in June. And we're looking at probably doing around Dayton. And then in August, we have an event in Detroit. Oops, my battery's running low here. We have an event in Detroit. And then I've got another event in Detroit scheduled for December. So the Detroit events, Debbie Williams up there she's investing a lot of money and having these great, awesome auditorium events with dinner. She had one last December the 8th. We had about 200 people there, and we had a stage. We had the FBI there, and she has entertainment, and she just does an awesome job. So
that's awesome.
Got all those things going on, and then
But we missed one. We missed a very important one to me. April 2nd. We have the Fools No More 3rd Annual Rally. We will be holding that at the Capitol on the 2nd, which is on a Monday at 1 o'clock. We will begin at 1 o'clock. Connie is flying in. I can't wait. She's flying in. She's going to be one of our speakers for that event. We've also got Greg Orman, who's one of our gubernatorial candidates, who has been investigating diligently what's going on with our children here in our state, who is very driven and determined to make a change for our children's sake and the preservation of our families. I'm reaching out to some other candidates. One of my favorites is Jim Thompson. I haven't talked to him. Yet, but I will be talking to him. He was part of the Fools No More rally last year. I still want to reach out to Representative Owsley, who also sits on the Oversight Committee, who, I know most people feel powerless that even watch that committee, Connie, because they don't do anything. They They don't talk about. They're more worried about the foster parents being protected than they are our families being preserved. So,
Definitely.
of course, you know, I was hopefully going to be part of that committee, but they gut and go the lay positions so that people like me could get on that. So, but, you know, April the 2nd, we are going to have this rally. We are also looking to bring together other coalitions. So Fathers' Rights, kind of what we did in DC. We teamed up with other issues that are evolving around our children. And so we've got the Medical Marijuana Coalition and the momentum going behind that. We've got children suffering from epilepsy. One of them, which has stolen my heart, is Gavin. Go look up Gavin's battle. You know, he's right now under the AMR program, which is the American Medical Refugee Program he's now living in a volunteer's home, separated from his father and his siblings with just his mom, trying to combat the grand mal seizures. Those are all issues. Criminal justice reform. I mean, these are issues that are impacting the future of our families and our children. And so we're going to come together as one unity, and we're going to demand that these legislators start working for us, hear our voices, and fighting for our children in all capacities. So I'm very excited about that. And I